Okay, this is the November 28th meeting of the Yakima School District Board of Directors, and we are extremely happy to be here at Davis High School. Thank you for hosting us. I just wanted to get a few things out of the way. We are live streaming this meeting. If you stream, you know how to do it. If you want to live stream one of our future board meetings, you can find the link on our webpage under Find It Fast. Or just go to the webpage ysd7.org/board meetings. We will be taking public comment today. There are 2 opportunities for public comment during the meeting. The first one is typically for items that are on the agenda. And the second one comes toward the end, at the end of the meeting, and that is for items that are not necessarily on the agenda. And we are being recorded. Where's Barb? There, okay. We are being recorded for future broadcast on our YouTube channel. And I was told at our last meeting that they may be able to get that up as soon as the end of the week. So maybe even before that. So just check the district's YouTube channel, and you can mark that and watch yourself as much as you like in the future. Okay. We have a Davis student doing the Pledge of Allegiance today. Hi, welcome. Could you introduce yourself? And then Mrs. Fiskus will put the flag up on the screen, and there's a flag up on that wall. So just whenever you're ready to begin.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sofia Villegas, and I'll be saying the Pledge of Allegiance today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you happen to know the character word of the month?
Yes. So the character word of the month for December is going to be curious, which is marked by desire to investigate and learn. And with this, the trait is critical thinker and being a problem solver.
Thank you. And could you say your name once again, please?
I'm Sofia Villegas.
Sophia?
Yes.
I'm going to let the rest of the board thank you also for being here, and they may have a question or two for you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Graciela, would you like to begin?
Hi, Sophia. I'm Graciela. Thank you for
Hi.
being here after hours, after school. What is your favorite class in high school?
Definitely wind ensemble.
Which one?
Wind ensemble.
Oh, cool. Okay. What instrument do you play?
I play the flute.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
What year are you in, Sophia?
I'm a senior here at Davis.
You're a senior. Good.
Yeah.
So we will see you in June, right?
Yes, that's the
Yes,
goal.
okay.
Yes.
All right. Ryan, would you like to thank Sophia?
No questions, but thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Norm?
I'd also like to thank you for being here, and it's a thrill for me to be here, being a Davis graduate myself and a former school counselor at Davis. So it's always nice to come back to Davis. What are you thinking about now that you're a senior? What are your plans for the future?
Well, as of now, have applied at a couple colleges, and I'm currently looking into majoring in architecture to broaden my pathway to hopefully becoming an interior designer.
Okay, well, I wish you well in your pursuit.
Thank you.
Raymond?
He stole my question, so it's going to be brief. Just want to thank you for leading us in the pledge and being here today. And I just wish you well in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sophia, thank you. very much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us this afternoon.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Good luck for the rest of the year, and we will see you in June.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda is the Yakima Land Acknowledgement. Director Walker is been asked to read that today.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
Thank you, Norm. And now we will get right to the reason that we're here today. We take usually one meeting a month and use that meeting to visit a school building. And because of the number of schools that we have and the fact that we don't have 12 Mondays to visit, it takes about 3 years for us to get around to visit all of the school buildings. It's really a special time for us to be able to hear what's going on in the schools, what students are thinking, what teachers are how teachers are doing, and the rest of the staff as well. So I'm going to introduce Principal Hasty. If you would like to introduce your staff that's here, and then we're going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today. So I'd first like to introduce our admin team. So Ms. Jewel Brumley is one of our assistant principals. Mr. Hector Camacho is one of our assistant principals. And then Mr. Alvarado, Lorenzo Alvarado is another one of our assistant principals. I think he's going to find a cord, actually. Yes, he is. And then Ms. Natalie Riley, back in the back there, is also one of our assistant principals, new this year to Davis. And then we have Ms. Beth Dahlman. She is our new IB coordinator this year, as well as one of our long-term chemistry teachers and a Davis grad as well. And I'm looking at Miss Lynn Green, who is our librarian and has been at Davis. Lynn, since when have you been at Davis? How long? 83. Nice. Wonderful. And then students, actually, come introduce yourselves.
Hello. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us. My name is Ezra Rotman, and I'm currently a sophomore here at Davis. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Dakari Lewis. I go to Eisenhower High School. It's such a pleasure to be here and to meet you all, so thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Luana Huang. I'm from Eisenhower High School, and I'm so happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Valeria Garza. I go to Eisenhower High School and I'm a junior, and thank you for having me.
And our students from Eisenhower are actually here for another part of the presentation from later, but we are very happy to have them here at Davis. So thank you. Did I miss anyone staff-wise? I don't think so. I think we're, oh, there's Mr. Alvarado. Mr. Lorenzo Alvarado, assistant principal. Okay.
Good afternoon, Board President Rice, members of the school board, Superintendent Green, and other honored guests. Welcome to Davis High School.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, here at AC Davis High School, our mission statement is that we educate students for success, lifelong learning, employment, and social awareness. Our instructional leadership team, I would like to highlight, as you see up there, we have an instructional leadership team that with 2,500 students and a staff of 136 teachers is very representative of our staff. So we don't have just one or two departments represented, we have multiple departments represented. And we meet twice a month currently. As you can see, the YSD strategic plan is up there, and we align our school improvement goals to the YSD strategic plan, and everything else that we do is aligning to the strategic plan, as you will see as we go through our presentation. Strategic data use. So our cycle for continuous improvement begins with a comprehensive needs assessment. So we review a variety of data for our comprehensive needs assessment. We do it every year. Actually, as an ILT, we're doing it monthly, but every year we meet as an ILT in the summer, instructional leadership team, and then all staff in August prior to school starting goes through the same data cycle and needs assessment, and even more comprehensive. So we look at our demographics, our state and federal assessments, including the Washington School and Improvement Framework, the district screeners and other assessments. So for example, our reading inventory that helped to inform our goals for our school improvement plan, our SABRS data, our social emotional screener, as well as our math screener. The Center for Educational Effectiveness perceptual data survey that we take every year, which we've just finished taking, where our teachers and our parents and our students take it. We go through it thoroughly in August with all of our staff, and then we compare it to where we were the year before, where we've had growth, and where there are some disconnects. And then we use a variety of other progress monitoring measures and common formative assessments across departments that the departments then come back and share together, and then share as an ILT. And then from there, we do our next data cycle with our ILT. These are our current demographics, as you can see off of the OSPI website. I'll leave that there just for a second so you can take a look.
Heather, are these this year's numbers?
So they are from last year's, and they are not this fall. So their OSPI is basically, we look at the year prior.
Thank you.
Mhm. So wanting to highlight that, yes, while quite a bit of this presentation is focusing in on some of our numbers and some of our data, we're more than just the numbers. Our why is about our kids. And at Davis, one of the big things here that we really work hard is to instill that sense of family. And you'll see it on shirts, you'll hear the kids talk about it. We are a family. And that whole feeling and understanding, and that we wrap around students and they wrap around us as well to get to that end result of the graduation and beyond, is what's incredibly important, and want to make sure that we highlight that that's the reason we're here, each and every one of us. So our school improvement goals this year, so these are from this year that we crafted in August for our school improvement plan. We had old school improvement plans, some of you might remember, had a lot of goals on them, a lot, and they would just sit on a shelf. We want to make sure that it is a living, breathing document that we are looking at all the time. And we did last year, we got down to 5 goals, and this year we got down to 3. And so with all of our action steps and everything, and this is where we are concentrating with all of our students and with our staff this year. So that first goal is increasing our freshman on track percentage from midterm to semester by 20% among all demographic groups, specifically focusing on multilingual learners and students with disabilities. So freshmen on track mean students passing all classes. Okay, so we have data that we will show you from the midterm that you will see. We will increase our on-time graduation percentage from 85% in 2022 to 95% in 2026 among all demographic groups. Again, focusing on multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and then Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Our third goal on our school improvement plan actually came from looking at the reading inventory data, and we will increase proficient grade level readers by 7% overall in the reading inventory from fall to spring, specifically focusing on multilingual learners and students with disabilities. The reading inventory we give in fall, winter, and spring. And we have worked extensively with our staff, with our teachers, on looking at that data and really disaggregating it. And then just today, in fact, and Ms. Brumley will talk about our school-wide reading strategy, but we have started to roll out a school-wide reading strategy with our staff that they will work with students, and then hopefully to see a rise overall from fall to winter and then winter to spring. Okay, Smarter Balance Assessment, our spring results from 21-22. So the Smarter Balance Assessment ELA proficiency rate as of last spring was 52.3%. What you will see, you look down at the table below, 2018-19, which we pulled that data. Thank you, Ms. Brumley, for doing that. And this was prior to COVID. So you can see that at that time, 49.5% was our rate for ELA proficiency. And so this past year, it was 52.3. So we do have a slight increase from prior to COVID there. Our SBA math proficiency rate this past spring was 13.5%. as compared to a 22.5% before COVID. So you will see, you will absolutely see a decrease there. And then Ms. Brumley will be talking about some of the things we're doing in mathematics to address that. And then our WCAS, which is our science test that our students take, was at 40.1% this last spring. And that is, we have that up from 35.6% in 18-19.
Hi there. Can I have the laser pointer?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so our Washington School Improvement Framework, this threshold is the threshold of students making adequate progress for the year. And if you notice, our English language learners and our students with disabilities, those are the closest to that threshold. And so those are where we're focusing in our school goals to improve so that we can bring those up. And by doing that, all of the scaffolding and good teaching that we use for this with our PLCs and our strategies where we're using this year will also help all the other thresholds go up also. But that's where our focus is for this year.
Move far. Our overall success rate, and by success rate, we mean passing courses and courses being passed. So at the quarter one, the data was pulled on October 27th, that our overall success rate, which is the number of courses, the percentages of courses being passed, was 83.1%. So you can see that broken down by grade level there. So 9th grade was at 82.5, 10th, 81.3, 11th, 80.8, and 12th, 83.8. So the hope is to raise that so at semester, the success rate is even higher and the credits are achieved. Attendance rates, and Ms. Brumley, you can chime in if you would like. You want to talk attendance rates?
So our attendance rate, we pull this data by period, and that means that if you're here the period, you get credit for the attendance. That way, if you only skip one class, you're not marked absent for the whole day. So we go period by period. And with our students that go to YV Tech and period by period is much more accurate. So we've increased our attendance. If you saw the rates from last year was 85%. So now we're at 90.16. And our best attenders are our freshmen right now, and we're really focusing on our freshmen. So that's a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, our discipline rates so far, you can see that September and October, that's compared the first number that you see. So look at September, for example, 24, and then this year's, that was last year's, this year's 10. What we mean by that is that those are actual exclusions. So we have gone down significantly in our number of exclusions from last year to this year. And in that data, so you see 24 down to 10 this year. October, last year was 35, down to 24 this year. In that data, only one student is repeated. So that shows a significant decrease in our discipline rates. And some of that could be attributed to the fact that our teachers work really hard with the students and to wrap around and utilize the counseling team and to utilize other resources that we are lucky enough to have here at Davis and work together as teams. We also had significantly less ninth grade students this year, and our student numbers were down. And so that also, we saw that as a positive impact as well.
Heather, can I ask a question? My question is, are these numbers cumulative throughout the year? Or were there like 10 in September and then a different set of kids, 24 in October?
Can you go back a slide?
Yep.
All right. As you see the stair steps for last year's going up through June, that is cumulative. So this is cumulative up, going up. So we had 10 in September and 14 in October for a total of 24.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I'm next. That's right. All right, our literacy focus. We have a school-wide reading strategy that all classes will have a reading strategy that they use so that students get used to using that strategy. So it's called marking the text. You can see in the picture, they number each paragraph and then they underline and circle key ideas and phrases that they can quickly go back and find their evidence when they're talking to share with each other or when they're trying to decipher what their reading was about. It gives them a quick, easy reference to go back and find their key ideas that they're looking for to answer the question. We took our reading goal and we broke it down into action steps. And in October, we shared with the staff all the reading inventory data from September. And then just today, all the staff was trained on the reading strategy so they can use it in all of our classes. In December, we're doing what's called a soft launch of the reading strategy, and we'll be filming some classes with the reading strategy so we can show that as a review in January. And then everybody is supposed to be using that reading strategy from January to February, where they'll bring back student work and say how it went. And then we'll monitor, review, and adjust if we need to for our reading strategy, because we really want those reading scores to go up. Our math focus, our PLTs are working on a lot of common form and assessments to measure the students' goals, especially for our multilingual learners. But another thing we're trying to do is to make the math come alive. Students often sometimes think math is like, when are we going to ever use this? What's it going to be for? But like in Algebra 2, right before Halloween, they did a lesson on quadratic equations, and they used the pumpkin cannon launch at the pumpkin patch out in Natchez. And so students were really into it. It was a really great lesson that our Algebra 2 classes did, but we're trying to make the math come alive for our students. Our social emotional learning focus, our SABRS data, we had very few high at risk for social emotional strategies, and those are singleton looked at by our BSET team. We have 20% who are at some risk, and we have a large set of people that work with that, but our 77% at no or low risk is really a decrease because we have so many services here at Davis for our students. Besides our counselors, our PBIS team is very active. Our advisory teams are active and looking at this data. We also have our social worker on campus, and he runs groups. We have our drug and alcohol counselor on campus who runs groups and runs interactive things at lunch to try to get students to make sure that they're staying safe and drug-free. So we have several interventions here. Our nurse works with us on our PBS team. We just have lots of interventions that we are really focusing on our students who need the help.
Jewel, can I ask a question, please?
Of course.
How are these percentages arrived at? Are they self-reported by students or identified by staff or parents or through some other mechanism?
So the SABRS is a survey that students report. They took the survey and then the data comes back from that. And so it is a self-report on the anonymous survey, but then we can actually dig into that and target students that we are know at high risk. And so it's a really nice system that works out for those students that are at the highest risk or even at some risk. We can really dig down into the data and find out who they are and offer supports.
Thank you.
Follow-up question to that. What's the response rate for the students on that survey?
Ooh, I don't know that right off the top of my head. I have to look it up and get back to you. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so the TNL strategies is a district to achieve high quality teaching and learning, professional learning communities, which we will talk just very briefly about a couple of ours coming up, professional learning teams, induction, mentoring, and coaching, which we have obviously as a district, but at Davis High School, we go further with that and we do what's called Pathway to a Pirate with all of our new teachers. And that's new teachers to the profession as well as new to Davis. And they meet twice a month and talk about instructional strategies, and they bring evidence and discuss. And then they also do things like Student for a Day, where they actually are a student for a day, participating in other people's classrooms and reflecting on their own instructional strategies. And so we also do that throughout the year. And then principal supervision for the district, as well as one of my individual learning plan goals as a principal is to be working with the assistant principals on all of their growth goals and their instructional leadership, and then also on our instructional leadership team and more shared responsibility and shared leadership and growing the instructional leadership team. Professional learning teams. So just as a review, I know that the board, you have been going through some of these trainings as well. But the 4 questions of professional learning teams: what do we expect students to learn? And that's where you're starting with an essential standard. How will we know if each student has learned it? How will we respond when students experience difficulty? And how can we extend and enrich the learning for students who have demonstrated proficiency? What we've chosen to do at Davis High School when we're doing this model is to have each of our teams where they self-selected, our teachers self-selected into what professional learning team that they wanted to be a part of. And they started with one essential standard. What's one essential standard you want to focus on to take through this cycle? So they landed on an essential standard, and then they talked about common formative assessments and developed a common formative assessments. Some of our teams are right at that point. Others are beyond that point and have started bringing back the student evidence and student work of that common formative assessment and discussing what went well, what was a challenge, and what each other did. So, for example, if I had higher scores, I want to know, here's what I did that I can share. Or if another teacher had a lot higher scores and more understanding than I did, I want to know what they've done. And then they can visit each other's classes, and we make time for that as well. And then extending and enriching the learning for students who have demonstrated proficiency. So our teams are at different places, which is absolutely okay, meeting them where they're at and working with them. We have our ELA and our CTE examples, which I'll briefly let Julie, you want to talk about CTE just real quick because it's really cool.
Oh, no, it's not. All right, our CTE examples, our STEM team is working with, and STEM is our wood shop, our robotics, our drafting, and our material science. They are working with their students to do resume skills and resume writing, and each time they master a skill in their class, they can add it to the resume and learn how to format a resume so that they'll be more effective getting jobs. And they've brought back samples of students' works, and they're formatting that already. We have 2 of our special ed life skills classes in that PLT also that they're bringing back work also for those students to put their skills together in a resume. Our arts have already brought back work to show they're all doing the 7 design elements and the 7 key elements of art. And they've brought back in 2, well, actually 4 of the teams have now shared their student evidence. And when they're talking, it was really cool to see them talk about, oh, this student didn't get the form. So here's a better example of form. And then that was photography. But then our art teacher, Carol Halls, was like, well, when I do form, we do this. And then it helps to that. And then, our photography teacher was like, oh, that's a really good way to explain it. And so they all have the exact same standard that they're looking at, but then how they're explaining it in their various arts is really kind of cool. And our business department is working on the reading strategy and working on technical reading of articles that go with business and go with our family and consumer science. And they brought back some of their work that they were offering to students, and they haven't brought back any student work yet, but they were talking about how to split that work up and make it more accessible for students in reading the whole amount of work that they were doing. So that was really cool to see that, oh, you do that in your class? Oh, I might try that in my class. So it was really fun to see that.
Okay, this part, just to highlight for you, we have really been working and focusing on student voice and authentic learning experiences with our staff. And so one of the things that we've done is interviewing students on what are authentic learning experiences in your homes, and what are the experiences that you're receiving in school that are authentic or maybe that don't match. And then we're working with our staff to discuss that and talk about that and say, how can we have more authentic learning experiences for our students in our classrooms? And we're also through student voice, and you'll hear more about student voice at the district level coming up, but our student principal advisory council, we started that last year, and we are getting it going again this year as well, and hoping to get a lot more freshmen and sophomores on that as well. And then as far as cultural learning, from Japanese, Indigenous, Hispanic, Latino learning experiences. So we interviewed students on authentic learning experiences, but also on the October 7th day, I believe it was October 7th, we also had teachers sharing what their cultural experiences were, what their learning experiences were from a variety of cultures as well. Well, anything you want to add to that? Okay. Okay, just a couple more things we want to highlight before we wrap up. Hector Camacho, please come up.
Hello, everybody. So I have the privilege to talk a little bit about our migrant program and some of the exciting things that's occurring here at Davis. At the time of this presentation, we had about 221 students that were identified to be eligible for the migrant program. And this year, we kind of identified 4 areas that we want to work on within the program. So the first one is to increase graduation rates. Second is to increase access to opportunities. Third, develop leadership and advocacy skills. And the last one is to strengthen our relationships with families. So when we kind of talk about graduation rates, after running some numbers from last year, we had about an 81% graduation rate for our migrant students. And our hope is to at least increase it by 5% this year. When we're talking about these opportunities for students, our goal is to do 1 visit per month, and that each one of our migrant students gets the opportunity to go visit a college campus. What's been great about this opportunity is not only are we mixing in like a post-secondary education visit, either to a college campus or a technical school, we're also trying to throw in more of a cultural fun thing that many of our students may have not access to or the means to do so. So for example, our first trip in October, we visited the University of Washington in Seattle, and we also took the opportunity to take the students to the zoo. And so for many of them, not only was it the first time they were able to leave the area or visit in Seattle, but it was the first time seeing many exotic animals and really lavish over the things that many of us take for granted. Earlier this month, they also took students to Heritage University to check that out, and went to the Yakima Cultural Center too, which many students learned about the history of the Yakima tribe in this area. In January, they're planning on doing a trip to Perry Tech and YVC, and the kind of the fun component to that would be attending a YVC basketball game. So that's currently being finalized with YVC and Perry Tech. So very cool stuff. With the leadership and advocacy skills, a lot of this getting really promoted during our weekly leadership meetings on Wednesdays, where students get together for about an hour. And what's truly spectacular about this is much of it is student driven, in a sense that our migrant team has created surveys, talked to kids to discuss and find out what they're most interested in, what they want to learn. That way we could find the resource to fulfill those needs for those students. Some examples that they've come up with so far have been stuff like self-care, financial aid, college application processes, and I guess healthcare referrals as well. And in such, there has been some leadership meetings where we have brought in like the district nurses, where they've done, hearing and vision screenings for our students. They made the necessary referrals. They brought in people to discuss about the financial aid and college admission. So it's been a very cool site to do it. And it has a pretty good attendance rate, anywhere from, I would say, 20, 30 people now. And it's still kind of in its infancy, but we still kind of struggle trying to keep kids here after school hours. So word of mouth is spreading, so it's becoming very good. And lastly, I think one of the most amazing things that's happening within our program is family engagements. As you can see up on the picture up here, this is a snapshot of our parent night that occurred earlier this month on the 2nd of November. One of the biggest things that we really wanted to do was kind of showcase the successes and achievements that our migrant students are having. So at this particular meeting, we decided to honor our migrant students that had demonstrated great attendance up to this point. We recognized 78 students that either had a 90% attendance rate and or perfect attendance. So out of the 78 families, we invited each one personally. So we called them up and say, hey, we would like to honor your child at this meeting. It'll be very good if you and your family could attend. So out of those 78, 63 families showed up, and 217 people were in this very common space to receive the awards. And as you can see there, that was a picture I took. The thing that I really love about this picture is, this family was one of many that brought in flowers and balloons because they were so excited that their child was being recognized for something. And it was truly spectacular. At the end of this particular family night, we also did a family survey in which these families wrote and expressed their needs as a family, what they would like to do for the upcoming parent nights. So our next parent night is scheduled for the 14th of December. And this one, we're going to target all students that will be passing all their classes. So right now, those numbers are looking pretty promising. And on top of that, we're also going to be putting on like a resource fair for the parents at the same time. So not only are they going to come to get their students get recognized, but they're going to also get access to all the community resources that they expressed interest in. So it should be very good. That would be running from 5:30 to 7:30. So if you could stop by and join that out, that would be really cool.
Okay, and one more program spotlight for you guys. So our International Baccalaureate program, we have the motto this year is IB for me. And we have a new IB coordinator who I introduced to you earlier, so Ms. Beth Dahlman this year. And so we really focus on the IB learner profile traits and the IB approaches to teaching and learning in all of our courses. It doesn't matter if it's an IB course code or not. We are focusing on inquiry, knowledgeable, communicator, being open-minded, thinking, caring, balanced, reflective, risk takers in all of our courses. Some of what that has resulted in is with our numbers of tests last year. We had 154 students who had signed up for taking IB tests actually at the end of their courses. And this year we have 273. And so you see a huge jump, and attributing that jump to students feeling like they can take a course in IB when they do get to their junior year. And then real quickly, just
Can I highlight one other thing with IB? We actually have an IB ELA course that is an inclusion course that is co-taught with the IB teacher and our special education teachers. So we are trying to reach all when we say IB for all. We also want to spotlight dual credit opportunities. We are working on articulations with YBC and Central. We do offer college and high school from Central and Eastern Washington University currently. Students can take those courses, just the normal course in their course schedule, and get college credit at the end if they pass with an acceptable grade, because the coursework is college work. We're also working on developing AAs or BAs as a seamless pathway from Davis to those other schools. Of course, all our international baccalaureate courses, as they pass the test, they also get college credit for that. And then our big one this year is our Arizona State University AA partners. We have ninth graders. We have a section of ninth graders that are taking first period. They are taking health and biology this year, and they will work towards an AA by the time they graduate in 4 years. Our spotlight for the board and the community involvement, we really are going to work on a set of micro credentials for our students to put on those resumes and put on those job applications. Punctuality and attendance is one, appropriate communication skills with an adult, general computer skills, not just the Microsoft that we offer in our business if they take that class, but maybe a subset of that, appropriate dress for situations and work, time management, and any others that we can work on so that our students, when they go out and apply for jobs, they're ready for them, they know how to work with them. What we'd like to see is what kind of skills do our employers want our Davis either students or graduates to have recent graduates. So some of our students work from their sophomore year on, and we want to make sure that our Davis students are well prepared to go into the workplace.
We greatly appreciate your time and thank you for letting us highlight a lot of the great work that our teachers, our kids, and our staff is doing. Any other questions at this time?
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Jewel, and thank you, Hector. This was a great presentation and full of information that I think we'll all have to take a little more time to dig into, but I wanted to open up first for any questions or comments from board members. Graciela?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a few questions. You talked about one of the earlier slides when you maybe showed some of the SABRES data. Can you give us an example of some of the challenges you're seeing kids struggle with post-COVID?
Well, I would, and colleagues, feel free to chime in if you would like. But some of the things that I see are just struggles with, like we talked a little bit earlier about with IB, we're focusing in on self-management skills, and so that seems to be a struggle. Coming back and that self-management, the organizational pieces, and getting back into what that looks like, and then also the social emotional side of just we're seeing depression, and we're lucky enough to have a social worker and drug and alcohol specialist and our counseling team, and then referrals, being able to refer, which those are kind of the main things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that I see and that I've heard people talk about is overcoming anxieties. When we were virtual and online, a lot of those anxieties were really relieved because they were at home, they were in their comfort zone, and coming into a big school always increases anxieties for everyone, not just students, but teachers and staff and the public. So with all our counselors, they're having more time helping students with anxieties, and our social worker and Jerry Galindo, our drug and alcohol counselor, that really helps reduce some of the stresses. But yeah, overwhelmed and anxieties are probably the number one right now.
Thanks for sharing that. I think I read recently that the American Academy of Pediatrics is recommending that all kids get screened annually for anxiety beginning at age 9. So it's a nationwide pandemic, I think. A couple of other questions. You answered a lot of the questions as you were going, that I wrote down as you were going through the presentation. You talked about authentic learning experiences, and I was having trouble understanding what that is. Can you give me an example of what that is?
Okay, yeah, I thought about that after the fact. So, so when we're talking about authentic learning experiences, we're talking about how students and how people learn in just their own traditional cultural environments. So, like Ms. Brumley can talk to you about, ideas of like, okay, you grow up fishing, you grow up sewing. I'll tell you, I grew up quilting. How does that happen? How do you learn? What's the repetition that you have to do? What are those pieces who's that village around you? And so trying to take those same types of ideas and then move them into the classroom with how does that learning happen authentically. Okay. And, and then how can we move that into the classroom so it's not like, okay, here's one way that we're learning at home and we're learning how to do, even if it's baking. Actually, quite a few of the kids in the interview talked about baking and cooking. And then, you come into school and sometimes it's here, let's sit, let's take notes, and then let's bring back the information. And it's not always in the same fashion. So there's a disconnect. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Your IB program, I was pleased to hear the increase in the number of students taking the test. Do you have any data to show, does your IB test takers match the demographics of your overall student population?
Yes. So Now they are, yes, they are now mirroring the actual student population that we have. And so when you look at the demographic side, so where we do need to work further on that is working, like Ms. Brumley talked about how we're doing an inclusionary co-taught class with our IBELA. And so because our special education population was severely underrepresented prior, and so the last few years, and we look course by course, in fact, and say, okay, course by course, what's each course looking like? So for example, we might look at IB chemistry versus IBELA. How is that mirroring our actual population? And then what are we going to do to allow for it and to make that, that engagement with our students, which is part of why we really started doing the IB learner profile and approaches to teaching and learning in all courses, so that students could really feel like, hey, it's not just about, can I access it? It's about, I'm going to take this because I know I can. So we can provide data for you guys. We can provide a lot of data for you guys, but
Awesome.
I won't do it right now, but I can send that to you.
I appreciate that. And just for my own learning, I'd be interested to see, I don't know if you have a course description maybe on that inclusionary class. I just would be interested to read a little bit more
Sure.
about that and the content.
Okay,
there.
sure.
And then just curious, I know we have our new partnership with Arizona State, and you mentioned that. How is that going so far? I know we're just a couple of months into it, but are kids passing their tests? Just kind of a general overview would be helpful.
Yes, actually, it's going quite well. They just finished up the health class just this last week, or they're finishing this week. So having the week off threw me off. So they should be finishing their health class this week, and they'll be starting on biology a little early, which is good because it's a little harder. And Arizona State is really partnering with our teachers and the Eisenhower teachers to scaffold the lessons so that they can really work through this. And as biology is coming up, they're really working on, okay, for biology, we need to do this because it's a little bit higher level than the health class was, but students are doing really well in it, and they seem to enjoy it. They think it's kind of cool that they got Arizona State t-shirts and that they're going to get this degree, hopefully. But they're working hard on it, and it's going well.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again, Ms. Hasty and the team here for putting the presentation together and for all your support and dedication to the kids. So we appreciate all your effort. Thank you so much.
Raymond, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I do have a couple questions maybe.
Okay.
So as you may know, part of our job is to evaluate student progress and achievement. And we've been discussing the impact of COVID or the pandemic on test scores and progress and achievement, so forth. So, and thank you for the responses you gave to Graciela. Those were very, very, I was going to ask that question, but she stole it again
She
from
took
me.
your questions.
But, so I'm just wondering here, you mentioned the social emotional learning issues. Is that the same as mental health issues?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We're social emotional learning. There's more qualifiers, I suppose,
Okay.
in how we're talking about it and what we're looking at different topic wise. So like when you
Okay.
see the SABRS assessment, that's
Mhm.
the screener, there's a variety of different areas.
Okay.
And so actually, Ms. Brumlin probably does know more about that piece.
So the social emotional part does kind of cross weave with mental health awareness and mental health knowing. One of the things that we really worked on last year and also are continuing this year is the it's okay to be not okay. And that's a national campaign that tells people that it's okay if you're not feeling great. Let's see what we can do to get better. And it decreases the stigmatism of going to a counselor or going to a social worker or going to our support services because it's literally, it's okay to be not okay. And you can get help with that. And that really increased some of our numbers of students accessing resources. And so that's something that our counseling team is really, really proud of.
So I want to push a little bit here. So the stat that I saw that 2% are at high risk for social emotional needs. So I'm just wondering, is that significant in terms of student population? Is it the intervention, or are there other variables that are impacting student performance at Davis High School? Because again, 2% of how many 2,200 students is a rather small sample size, I guess. So I'm just wondering if that's really significantly impacting student achievement, or are there other things besides anxiety, depression, and being overwhelmed? So I'm just trying to understand the data you presented and how it impacts the test scores.
So, and I'll let these guys chime in too. And this is the first year that we've utilized that screener. And so we're learning what it's all about too. So the 2% of like the 2,400, it actually was a lot smaller than we thought it would be, given the access to resources that we're seeing. And so it surprised us. So still trying to understand how that screener works. And as the students answer the question in the younger grades, you'll see that the staff also does a screener for the students. So there could be some of that as well going on there. Not quite sure, because we did feel like 2% is a very, very small amount, and we assumed it would be more. And the students are self-reporting though at this age. And so, still learning. We'll be giving it again. And so to try to understand it better and then learn how to really utilize that more. And then also looking into the idea of student advisors, because we have advisories here, where perhaps those the advisors could also do it on the 30 students that they have, and that would tell us more. So I appreciate the question. I'm not quite sure yet, at least on my end, how to really dig into that more, except to say that it was surprising, at least for me, given the amount of access to resources we're having. Do you want to add? Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank you for your leadership as well, and that of the assistant principals. I know these are challenging times, post-pandemic challenges, right, in terms of providing a good quality education for all our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Norm, do you have any comments or questions?
Most of my questions have been answered, so I would just like to compliment you again on what you're doing and the efforts you're making. I was real pleased to see the improvements in attendance. I think attendance is a sign that students feel safe in their environment and that they feel like there's something valuable. So hopefully that will continue
To rise,
to
yes.
rise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Ryan?
I think I'm in the same camp as Director Walker. Most of my questions have been answered, but I am just kind of curious as I'm looking now through the dark windows. I've been thinking, just curious, what's our ETA on the auditorium?
So currently it's April. Okay, so a current finish time is in April of this year. I know that it had been pushed back a couple times, and luckily what I told staff was don't put anything in the auditorium all year. Just having gone through construction in a previous district, I understand how things work and materials and such. And so at this point though, actually, personally, I'm pleasantly surprised that it's April. And so that's nice, but that's where we're at right now. And we do have if you're ever curious, we have a time-lapse camera in there too. So we get to play around and look at it. So yeah.
So everyone looks like little ants as they scurry around, right? Thank you, Heather and June and Jewel and Hector very much. It's been a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
And I have most of my questions answered. If I come up with any others as I maneuver through the presentation again, I'll certainly follow through. I was very pleased to see the attendance numbers have increased and the discipline numbers appear to be dropping down from what they were last year. And to see that you're being intentional about the social emotional learning for your students is very encouraging.
Thank you so much. We
So
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Dr. Green, do you have anything to add?
I just want to thank you for your leadership. I could actually talk for about a half an hour about Davis and your leadership and that of the staff. I had the pleasure of speaking with some community members recently, and it brought me great joy to tell them that I believe you to be our most instructionally sound lead principal to have walked the halls of Davis High School. So to know that you bring that into your repertoire to help us grow in the area that means the most to students, and that's what happens within the walls of the school, is of paramount importance. So thank you for your leadership, and I want to thank your assistants as well for their support of you. When you came into the building, you certainly had the support of every one of your assistant principals, and that's not to be forgotten. And to do the work that you do requires the entire staff. It's not just you, you know that, it's your entire team, and you put together a team that is top notch. And I commend you for the work that you've done. And I was proud to have my daughter graduate from this school and under your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We understand if folks need to leave, with you have other things that are calling at you, feel free to do that. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. Next on our agenda are items of board interest. First, reports from members of the board. I know that most of us went to the State School Directors Annual Conference last week, late last week, and I wondered if any board members had anything to report back from there in addition to anything else that you might wish to report on. Ryan?
I enjoyed the conference and the sessions I was able to sit in, and I just wanted to specifically compliment Dr. Darling on the session that he co-led regarding the dual language program. It was very interesting to see the responses and the questions that were coming out of the crowd towards the end of that presentation. It was neat to see light bulbs going off in the room. So congratulations and thank you for that.
Anyone else?
I'm going through my phone looking for the name of the session that one of the names of the sessions that I attended, but there was a session that got into details about how boards how school boards have a direct impact on student outcomes. And there was a couple of researchers out of Montana that really dug into student outcomes and board behaviors and board how boards work together or don't work together in some cases, and the specific behaviors that led to positive student outcomes and negative student outcomes. And they even dug into student outcomes by various demographics. And so there was board behaviors or activities that led to overall better student outcomes, but then also looking at Black students, Native American students, and Latino students. And they were all slightly different activities or behaviors that boards had, strategies that boards use that led to those various outcomes. And so it was just really, really insightful, very much data validated, and what WSD used that research to amend their board self-assessment tool that they put out. And so there's, I think, 6 new indicators that are being measured on the WSDA board self-assessment. So it was just really, really good information. I want to share that the name of that in the presentation materials that were shared during that conference with Trevor and with the rest of the board as well. I just thought it was particularly insightful to understand how boards have a direct impact on student outcomes.
Thank you, Graciela. Anyone else?
Yes, I did attend a workshop that was very interesting. It had to do with suicide prevention models implemented by school districts, specifically models that are designed to intervene or to prevent suicide with students of color. And so it just kind of was a good, I thought it was a good workshop, and might have some questions for our superintendent in terms of what our model looks like and how that's being unfolded or implemented in the district. So it was a good workshop.
Norm, do you have anything?
Wasn't able to attend the entire conference due to some issues back home, but I did attend the pre-conference on creating a culture of belonging in the district, and I was really smitten with I had read the text before the presentation, and I think I mentioned to my colleagues the presentation was not as lively as the text is. I think the text is an extremely valuable one, and I would encourage our board members, we might want to do a book study around that. That's something we can decide later. But there's some really valuable concepts and information in there about approaching equity as a means of really creating a sincere culture of belonging for students and staff. So I think that's a different way of phrasing things, and that's really valuable. This isn't related to the conference, but I also wanted to mention an editorial from this morning's Seattle Times in which the Yakima School District is mentioned. And I'm going to just read an excerpt of that editorial, but the editorial, the gist of it is responding to the loss of a student at Ingram High School in Seattle, and that's had a tremendous impact on students and faculty and parents and the whole Seattle community. And some real concerns are arising about how do you maintain safety in school. And so the first part is kind of like what's not going so good in the state and in areas, but the second part refers to Yakima. And so I wanted to read that because I think it speaks well to the work our superintendent and his staff have done and some of the things that we made a commitment to invest in. So I'm going to start with Yakima has had much the same experience around safeguarding schools. Community members, rather than any outside agency, proposed what is now the most robust school security and notification system in the state. A $1 million program that equips all district staffers with a clicker to summon assistance or trigger a lockdown. Yakima also gets a heads up from the police anytime an officer answers a call where a student may have witnessed domestic violence or other trauma at home. And the district does have metal detectors at one alternative school. They have not picked up any weapons, but Yakima Superintendent Trevor Green believes their presence alone may be a deterrent. It's impossible to guarantee that any building is 100% safe, but Yakima's approach, an extensive notification system, some hardware, and trauma-informed attention to kids in need covers many of the bases. So again, I think that's just a nice compliment to get that kind of recognition from that journal.
Thank you, Norm. Okay, next on our agenda is the superintendent's update. Dr. Green?
Thank you. Yes, and thank you, Director Walker, for sharing that information. First and foremost, I'd like to start today just by citing our equity definition. One of the things that we certainly want to display and let our community know is that we believe equity to be the condition that would be achieved if one's group membership no longer predicted in a statistical sense how one fares. And then equity is the outcome, not just access to opportunity. And I really think that we've got the right definition. And I've shared with this in this forum before that WASA, our school association here in the state, has also adopted this same definition following our definition. So again, just to kick off today and cite that and acknowledge that we are striving for that equity as the outcome and not just the opportunity, but removing all of the predictors in a statistical sense is so important to our work. Now, moving forward, I just want to share a couple of highlights of what's happened this last 2 weeks and what's happening here in the future for everyone. A reminder, we have the YSD 105 legislative update, which is a virtual meeting on December 8th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. It is my understanding that we may have a couple of board members who will be absent. We will send the link to YSD 105 legislative update, so do expect that, but that's certainly an option for you to attend. We actually also have a special YSD legislative update that we are holding. We are reaching out to legislators to have them be in attendance. And in the past, for those of you that have been around long enough, we used to host a dinner with our legislative representatives. Our last one occurred pre-pandemic at Washington Middle School in the library, if you recall. This will continue to be a virtual meeting this year. So again, that will be December 12th from 6 p.m. to 7:30. And that information will be sent to your mail as well, your email. On February 27th, there is a Day on the Hill in Olympia. I will be in attendance to that. There is a link if you're interested in board docs, if you would like to attend also, but be assured that I will be there and representing our district in that event. Also, to share some great news, I was invited to be a part of a small group of superintendents to meet with the presidents of the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges on December 1st to discuss how P12 and the SBCTC, which is the organization of the presidents, can best work together to meet the needs of students, businesses, and industry in the state as we emerge from the COVID-19 crisis. So I will represent, be one of 9 superintendents to take part of that event and meeting with state presidents. Also, we have completed our basic education submission to the State Board of Education. It was finalized, certified, and we received the status of full certification for the 22-23 school year. The application is actually linked if you wanted to take a longer look. The quote that was shared with us was, congratulations are in order as your school district reported that it is providing all required courses, offerings, and activities, and we appreciate your effort to meet and follow the law by providing each and every student all elements of basic education. In addition, a couple of other items just to share with the board that are not included in the agenda today, one being that Director Beckett and I had a great visitation today at Adams Elementary. As he's nodding over there, he actually got to see what Dr. Darling spoke about in the dual language application. And so it was just wonderful to see the kindergarten students over at Adams Elementary fully engaged in learning Spanish in that first setting and becoming more fluent in their own language as we move up the steps into first grade, second grade, third grade, how that would change over the course of those years. And we would have English speakers learning more Spanish, Spanish speakers learning more English until both are completely bilingual. But it was great having you there, Director Beckett, and it was so nice to have him meet with teachers and also our staff and administration in that building. I was going to mention the story from the Seattle Times, so thank you, Director Walker, I appreciate that. Just to share, we also have had outreach around the ASU AA in the high school program, and I do have a call later this evening with a reporter from the Seattle Times asking more information about that program, specifically why we're not engaging with colleges and universities within the state. So rest assured that I will say all comers, if you're on board, I think that's more of a question for those presidents as to why they didn't want to engage in that process. So hopefully we'll start seeing some movement within our own state. And I say that as a proud Wildcat, Cougar, and Husky. So I think that's how I'll lead as well. I believe in all of those institutions and what they've been able to accomplish. I just would love to see them work more closely with public schools in providing opportunities for that AA before students leave high school. In addition, just to share with you 2 final items. One is that the SSAC, as I look over here to my right, we have our Student Voice fellows here, and it's so great to see students come to a board meeting and sit in the front row. Hopefully they'll keep coming back. We'll try not to keep them too much longer. But we do have an SSAC meeting coming up within the next 2 weeks where we will be bringing students from all over the district to participate in an event, which I know that will be led by many of our students that you see here tonight as well as myself. And then lastly, we do have our 3rd CFAC meeting. Dr. Darling will tell me what the acronym is again, because we always get it wrong.
Capital Facilities Advisory Committee.
There we go, the advisory committee. And could you just briefly share the plan for the visitation and how that came to be? I know that, when you don't see something to contrast, you have no concept of what could be. So please.
Yeah, so our last meeting, our CFO, Jake Cooper, and I were co-facilitating this meeting, and the team has decided they want to come visit some of our sites to finalize, before they start finalizing which schools they want to prioritize for either remodel or replacement next upcoming years. And so they decided they wanted to visit 4 schools: Nob Hill, McKinley, Hoover, and McClure. No, not McKinley, and Garfield. And Steve Brownlow, the principal at Garfield, is there, and we were talking about doing a school visit to his site. He said, "That's great, but if they walk into my building, they don't have anything to compare it to. They're going to say, well, this is nice, and is this bad? Is this good?" And so the team decided they wanted to go visit the 2 brand new schools that were built in Sela the last year. So we're going to start off our tour visiting the schools in Sela, and then afterwards come do site visits here, starting at Hoover and Garfield. So next Wednesday, if you like, we'll be loading the bus at 5 o'clock and driving across the river to visit those 2 buildings, and then coming back here and seeing Garfield and Hoover Elementary.
Great. And Dr. Darling, one of the schools we're visiting, I think you quoted as being what is it, World War II? How did you?
Oh, Hoover, a World War II era school, yes, because it was built in the 40s.
So thank you, and thank you both Jake Cooper and Dr. Darling for facilitating that committee. It's great that we have administrators on that. We have a great representation from across the community, including students who are a valuable addition to that process. So thank you for running that process. We're looking forward to those finalizations of priorities with the CFAC. And with that, that concludes the superintendent update for this evening. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Thank you, Dr. Green. Next, we have our first opportunity for comments from the public. This would be for agenda items only. Barb, do we have anyone who has signed up? No? Okay. Just a reminder, there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Next, we have our Student Voice Committee. We have Yakima School District lead fellows from the Student Advisory Council, and they will provide us with a presentation and revisit of the definition of student voice. Dr. Green, do you have anything to lead into this with?
I'd just like to thank our group here for their hard work and the thought that went into their presentation this evening. And I'll just turn it over to Marcello for the introduction, and we'll move forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, the board, for having us here, and thank you, students, for being here. I just wanted to take a second. This will mostly be student-led, as has all of our work, but just taking a quick moment to kind of reground us in the work that we're doing with students. It's really a leading example, as I've researched across the nation, and with educators across Washington. Many of them are watching closely at what we're doing in Yakima, and how we're engaging with students in a way that really no other district in the nation, and maybe only one other district that I've seen, has put black and white ink on paper to student voice and student voice work. And what we see today and what we will see throughout the rest of the year is completely student created, and 100% of these words were written first by students and then worked out with multiple other students from outside the group that you see here, and with adults at the district level, shoulder to shoulder. And so that work is really, if it reaches its fruition, will be the first of its kind in Washington. And this type of work that is very hands-on, project-based learning, where students are doing it themselves and creating their reality with their own hands, is really creating ripple effects throughout the district of how learning can happen in classrooms and at the school level. We saw that with our Davis presentation of their principal advisory council and how they're starting to mimic that work. And this is how our classrooms can be led and our schools can be led. And to do that at the board level and the superintendent level, which you've been doing for the past couple of years now, of really letting students lead the way and working shoulder to shoulder with them, is just incredible work. And I think we should probably take a moment every 3 to 6 months to remember the type of work that we're doing, and remember how incredible this work is and how there really are no other equals happening in the state that we can really look to, and many people are looking to us. And many people have reached out to me to see what we're doing and see how they can replicate it in their districts. So with that, I'll hand it over with the reminder that this is all student created and really exciting work, and really nothing that we created, but only things that we empowered and supported and worked with students in creating. So with that, I'll hand it over to our students.
Thank you, Marcello.
Thank you, Marcello, and thank you, board members, for your time and for being here and having us. So last board meeting that we attended on October 31st, we presented to you this definition, which is our team's fully written definition of student voice. Board, that's what we have written. And when we presented to you on October 31st, we decided that we were going to come back, which is today. We'd like to hear your full feedback now that you've had time to kind of let it sink in and review. So we'd love to hear your feedback, comments, answer any questions, and hopefully by the end of our time here, we could come to sort of an unofficial, official conclusion and sort of seal of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything to add before we move to board comments? No, okay. All right, you'll remember, just to refresh all of our memories, that when we met the last time, the board had some thoughts on using the word implement or any version of the word implement in this particular definition. And I just wanted to lead into this conversation with a reminder that the board is empowered and elected by the community to lead the district through a policy governance model that responds to community discourse, responds to community discussion and community questions, things like that. But they also expect us to make those difficult decisions that are necessary when you're operating any size district, but let alone one this size. We take an oath when we enter our position on the board, and that oath doesn't allow us to abdicate any of our responsibilities as a board. So we are responsible for employing the superintendent, evaluating the superintendent, approving the budget, listening to the voices of the community and faculty and staff and students and parents. So I think I'm going to, at this point, just open up the floor for other board members who have any comments or questions about this version of the definition of student voice.
I have a question. As I read this, is your intent as the individuals who've driven the writing of this intent that every idea is implemented, or that the district considers the student perspectives and ideas? I think that's my question. Is it every idea is implemented, or?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ms. Villanueva. So when we were discussing this, after we took all of you guys' ideas in consideration, and we realized that the implemented wasn't clarified enough to explain. So when we mean implemented, we don't mean every idea that comes across that we think up or that student voice community says and we bring to you, every idea is implemented. We mean our voice, we mean our seat at the table. When we mean implemented, we mean we want to be heard, not that every idea is going to be passed, but that voice specifically itself, the student voice, is implemented, meaning that we have our seat, meaning that we are equals with all the other adults and staff members in the district, because we're trying to implement our empowerment into the district, into our voices, so that we're all heard as one.
I see. So employee voice is implemented. Not every idea that
Yes,
you all as the
that's correct.
committee come up with is implemented. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
clarifying that.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
Just one, somewhere along the way, we received kind of 3 versions of possible statements. And there was actually there was a second statement that I thought better captured the intent of our students and also kind of addressed the board, a slight queasiness about the idea that everything that students suggest is going to be implemented, which wouldn't be the case. Not everything that anybody recommends not everything is implemented. It's a difficult and difficult process. But I wondered if those other versions were addressed by your committee and then discarded, or what happened in your committee?
We do have them here as our secondary and tertiary definition as a backup
Okay.
if it's definition of work. So we could pull those up
Yeah.
right now.
So, and my question would be also is, okay, is this the one that your committee said this is the one that speaks for us?
Well, our primary definition is the one that we all kind of agree on and we like, and that's what we have created the second and third option that you may read or look at in a feedback. So on the second one, we are more specific and we say where students are empowered and student voice structures are implemented, meaning that it's not every idea that's implemented. So it's more clear about that and stating that the student voice structures are being implemented by like the means of which we're able to have dialogue between students in the district and staff. That's what's being implemented here.
Just from my own personal viewpoint, that's the one I was most comfortable with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Any other comments or questions from board members?
Yes, I would have to say I still had the same concern with the term implemented, because we're defining in that the first definition or the first paragraph, we're saying that student voice is perspectives and ideas, right? So I'm just having trouble understanding your interpretation of that it's not the ideas and perspectives that are going to be implemented, but it's the voice. So I'm not sure. So when you say student voice, I'm thinking students' perspectives and ideas. And as Director Wachter said, that we do have other things that are pulling at us in terms of making a decision and whether or not we implement student voice, which is the ideas and perspectives. So I'm still having trouble understanding that. And I'm not sure. I just, there's so many different things that come into play, right? I mean, there's state laws. I'm sure you're not going to voice something that's against the law, right? But you may not know of a law that exists that's an education that's been, there's state mandates, there's district policies, and of course, there's stakeholder values and expectations that we have to all consider along with student voice. So I do have to say that I still have some concerns about that.
Oh, and thank you for Mr. Navarro for speaking up. So we did take your ideas and we thought about them, and we would just like to address, when we say perspectives and ideas, that is the student voice. Students, our age, teenagers are opinionated. We have our ideas and we have our opinions that we share amongst each other with trusted staff members. And so when we think of student voice, when we put in perspectives and ideas into the first and the second one, we kept it for the second one, that is just an elaboration of what our voice is. So it says student perspectives and ideas where students are empowered. So we meant our empowerment and our implementation on our ideas and opinions and perspectives and thoughts and truths is our voice. So that is what we mean when we tie them all in together, that our voice is our opinion and it is our thoughts and it is how we were raised and where we collect our ideas from homes and our cultures and our backgrounds. So we tie them all in together. So that's what we mean by our voice. Thank you.
No, I agree with the voice. It's very valuable. The student voice, we need to have that it needs to be part of our decision-making process and the work that we do. So we're totally in agreement with that. So I just wanted to let you know that we do value what you're doing, all the work you've done thus far. So, and we do need your voice.
I wanted to let the rest of the board weigh in before I do, so. You have anything to add? Hmm? Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with Director Walker. I like the second option because it's more clear that what you're asking for is that the structure of employee voice is implemented. The first version, that's why I asked the clarifying question, do you mean that all of your ideas are implemented? So your clarification was helpful to me. The second option is more clear to me that you just want to make sure that you have a seat at the table, not necessarily that every decision or every idea you have is implemented. So the second one is more clear for at least the adults in the room. It's more clear and easy to understand.
And we also need to consider for those who haven't been a part of this discussion, especially adults in the community or staff members who haven't heard your reports, who haven't been in the room, so to speak, what their natural interpretation of the word implement or implemented or implementation or any other version of that word, what that means to them, because they've not had the benefit of context. They will be they will have the common definition of implement, which means to do, essentially. And I too have concerns about the word implement, just any version of that word in this definition. I agree that the top definition there probably spells it out a little more clearly. But as far as having others who don't have the benefit of the context of the conversations, understanding what you mean, I think I would be happier if the word or any version of the word implement isn't in there. You could have a alternative language in there, like ideas considered or suggested or things like that. But implement is a pretty action-filled word, and there are a lot of things that the board is not necessarily actively involved in, but when we're talking about implementing a definition or implementing a policy, that's where the board comes in. And I would be concerned about community the perspective of community members when they read these paragraphs.
And I'd just like to clarify too, the way that you've used the word, I don't have a problem with the word implemented in and of itself. It does mean the doing. And what the second one says, it doesn't say that all your ideas will be implemented, but it does say that a commitment will be made to have the structure of student voice implemented, that there will be a structure in this school district that guarantees student voice. That I'm comfortable with. And so I think that's the way it's used in the second one is not about implementing all the perspectives and ideas. It's just saying that there will be a structure will be implemented that guarantees that student voice will be heard. And I'm very comfortable with that, the way it's used in the second one. So that's just.
Thank you, Mr.
Also, I like the second one more concise. And it's sometimes when we get too wordy, we get lost in all the wording. And the second one is just nice and concise and tidy. It's really easy to understand, or I think anyone can understand it. So
Thank you, Mr. Walker. That's really what we're aiming for with the student voice structure implemented, is that seat of at the table and sort of that student voice structure. Thank you.
I have actually a question for Dr. Green. We don't have a student voice policy. This is essentially the first step toward that is defining what we mean by student voice. When do you anticipate that that there might be a draft brought back to the board for consideration? What are you laughing at?
I'm smiling because our group might have one in their back pocket right now. If the board wanted to approve one, I think this is obviously part of a process to go back and make sure that we have the input of all students in moving this forward. So I don't know when this would be ready. It's contingent upon what the board decides, the movement of our group here in moving this forward. I'm very proud of the fact that they are very intentionally considering how to touch every student group across the district to make sure that this has everybody's fingerprints all over it, which is really what I'm after. I think I'm also just take this moment to say how I know that Marcello shared this, but this is truly cutting edge. I mean, when you're looking at what is up here and the implications of what this means for our district, it's not students having a seat at the table, it's them. They're pulling up a chair and placing it at the table that didn't exist previously. And by having this up here and saying students are empowered and student voice structures and are implemented, I read that too, and it's daunting to think about having a student voice structure for everything that we do, if so directed by the board, because the board still sets policy. And if you so choose to say we want student voice in whatever component it is, then there will be a structure, and you still have that power and that option. So I think there are implications beyond what we're seeing right now. But the shorter answer now is just we have to wait and see the process through and where we come together as a board and with our student group to make sure that we're on the same page before we move forward. So,
If I might add in there. So our group, we've been working through the past 5 months, and we have fully drafted our student voice policy that we would eventually like to bring back and present to you all. But the main foundation in the first part of that student voice policy is, of course, us defining student voice. So the reason we're here is to make sure we can come together and be one in the very foundation of our policy. That way, moving forward, we can move together. So once we have this definition and we have that foundation, then we're going to be moving into what we call our feedback process, where we're going to be collecting feedback from many different student groups and many leadership groups, different ones across different schools, including alternative schools in Yakima Online and YVC. And we're going to be collecting feedback, which we're going to take back to our policy. That way, we really have implemented student voice into our policy. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
I just want to say I deeply appreciate the time and effort and thought and commitment that you are making to this progress, and I really encourage you for doing. I'm really encouraged that we have students that are willing to do that. So, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I ditto that comment. We first started talking about employee voice to student voice 4 or 5 years ago, and I see previous school director Don Davis there, who I remember brought the topic up as a student rep on the board many, many years ago. And so it's exciting that we've come to this point where we have a group of students, and that you're also vested and interested in wanting to come to board meetings and share your ideas. I think as adults, we think we have all the answers, and we ask a lot of questions about, hey, what's going on with students, and why is our attendance rate so low? And so the fact that we might have an opportunity to just ask students directly, and that you all might have a survey in your back pocket where you've already asked those questions, to share that directly with us, I think that's really powerful. So really commend you all for doing this work and putting forward this policy. And just for a point of reference, it took the board 3 or 4 years to come up with our definition of equity. So don't be dismayed by the kind of ongoing discussion. It can take some time. I'll just say again, I do like the second option. I think it's more clear on what exactly is being asked, and I certainly can support that.
Thank you. The purpose of rewriting the secondary definitions and the tertiary definition was because we took into consideration, and we agreed, and we were talking, we were discussing, we were hashing out all together as a group, using our student voice, and to define what our voice means. Coming up here is what student voice is. Speaking out to staff is what our voice is. So we trying to capture what our essence is as students, and using that and creating a definition that shows who we really are. So this is as authentic as it gets. So.
Yes, and by all means, we created the second and third one, obviously, just in case the first one didn't work out. And as Mr. Walker stated, the second one does specify what implemented meant, which was the student voice structures. And I too think that if you guys want, we could go ahead with the second one, because we are stating exactly what we're trying to implement. So perhaps this evening you guys could maybe come to a conclusion on which definition best fits for our policy, or maybe get back to us soon.
Would it be, I want to gauge the board's pleasure on this one. Would you feel more comfortable with a motion accepting one of these definitions now? Do you want to consider it for another week or so? Or do you, is it your thought process that we don't need to have a motion to accept this?
Let's just try this on for size. I move that we accept the second definition as the definition of how student voice will be defined.
Thank you, Norm. That's what I was hoping to generate out of that question.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Norm and second by Graciela to accept, I'm going to call it definition number 2 for lack of anything else to call it. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned the development of policy after this. Would that be the second step, or how would that work? I know I'm getting a little ahead, but I'm just trying to think long term, because it all goes together.
Based on what the students have said and what Dr. Green indicated, I think they've already started on a draft to bring back to us for consideration. I think that's what I heard, right? Okay.
We have drafted our idea of a student voice policy, and now we're taking it to students to gather student voice for feedback. We'll be revising it, and we'll be bringing it to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Raymond? Okay.
Another question is that, and I'm not sure who this question is for, if it's for you, Trevor, or the students, is the policy intended to be a board policy or an operational policy?
I would actually defer that question to our students. I was under the impression that they're looking at an actual board policy.
We are.
But
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I don't want to speak for them. We have students right here. So.
Employee voice already been implemented.
Any other comments or questions, discussion? You ready for the vote? Okay, Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Yeah, this is, for Dawn, this has been a long time coming. Okay, so I guess now the real work begins, right? Or the bigger work begins with the policy development. So do you have any questions of us before we move on?
Just thank you for your time. I have no questions.
I really want to congratulate you all. And if there's more than you all, the four of you who weighed in on this, please extend the board's appreciation to them as well. This is a good piece of work, and it will form the foundation for greater things to come when we get our policy in place and actually start to operate using this definition in that policy. So thank you so much for the beginning stages of your work. And we look forward to seeing the resulting policy before too long.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we've reached the second opportunity for comments from the public. Barb, has anyone signed in? No, okay. Dr. Green, do we have a need for executive session? Did I miss those? Oh, I did. Okay.
Absolutely no need for executive session.
Okay, we do have some pre-approval discussions of monitoring reports for policy 1000.2.3, financial conditions and activities. We received the monitoring report for this at, I believe, our last meeting. All 5 board members responded to the resulting survey. All agreed that the superintendent and staff are in compliance with all elements of the policy. And I wondered if board members had any questions or comments on this one. Okay, with your indulgence, I'd like to package these 3 and then have a follow-on discussion with about policy 1.0, 1000.1.0. The next one is policy 1000.2.6, public access to facilities. All 5 board members responded. All 5 agreed that the superintendent is in compliance with all elements of this policy. I didn't see any comments in the survey results. Is there anything to add on this one? Okay. And finally, 1000.2.7, emergency superintendent succession. All 5 board members responded to this one. All 5 agreed that the superintendent is in compliance with all elements of this policy, and I didn't see any comments in the survey. So if there's nothing to add on this one, I would entertain a motion for approval of the 3, 1000.2.3, 1000.2.6, and 1000.2.7, approval of the monitoring reports as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Graciela. Is there any discussion? Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And then lastly, I think we need to have further discussion on policy 1000.1.0, global end statement. Not all board members responded to the survey, and I'm hoping that we can have just a short discussion on what is needed so that we could finalize this one and have the discussion, have the monitoring report survey completed by all board members.
I was one of the board members that didn't respond. I think this is the big one each year that we evaluate, and it was an entirely new report, and it just took some time for me to process and think and consider. There's a lot going on, so I just didn't get a chance to submit the survey. So I can respond to the survey.
Do you need any other information?
I don't think so. I want to go back through and look at the report again, and I can reach out to Superintendent Green if there are any questions.
Okay. Raymond?
Yes, I was another board member that did not respond. So, and the reason for that was there's a couple things, a couple concerns I had. One was in our policy 1000.1.0, it outlines how a monitor report should be. So missing from this report was the reasonable interpretation by the superintendent. So without that, there was some indicators and some benchmarks information that was presented, but it wasn't connected to a reason or an interpretation by the superintendent. So I couldn't really, I couldn't assess that or evaluate that. So that's one thing that was missing for me is the reasonable interpretation piece. And then again, aligning the evidence or the data with that interpretation. Because there's so much in there, right? So many terms and things. So I could interpret it in my way, and then the data may not align with my own interpretation if it's left up to me. So I like to see the interpretation. And also in past reports, we've also had a superintendent statement on compliance. So the superintendent would indicate whether he believes that he's in compliance or not, which was helpful to me. And that was missing from this report as well. And then the second concern I had, or the request we had, was the disaggregated data. And, you know, I think it's even more important this year that we get that data, because I'm trying to assess the impact of the pandemic on student achievement. And, you know, what do the different subgroups look like? How's that the pandemic impacted those specific groups? What are the trends, or are there any discrepancies between those student subgroups? So I need that would help me to better understand the student experience, and to determine whether or not the school district or we're accomplishing what we set out to do, or what we said we were going to do. So I think that just the disaggregated data, I would request that again, that we be presented with that information. So again, it's just without the interpretation, I really can't evaluate against the data or the evidence that was presented. And so for me, there was just not enough. It wasn't substantial enough for me to complete this survey. So, you know, so this is, again, the pandemic really has an impact. And we heard today that, you know, mental health and the social emotional learning and all those things that are in place, and the faculty, the principal, the leadership here are dealing with in terms of student achievement. So, it helps to understand how the pandemic is really impacting the post-pandemic or whatever we want to call it is impacting student learning. So I wasn't able to draw any conclusions from that report. And again, I would ask for those two items, the interpretation, the statement of whether or not the superintendent believes that the goal was met or there's significant or reasonable progress, and then the disaggregated data.
Okay. Dr. Green, do you have a response, or do you want to just let us know when we might expect that?
So I'm looking at the policy and it calls out the 5 aspirational goals as I look at it, which are of course on our compass. I do not see a problem meeting the first 2 requests of the self-assessment or statement of completion. I know that we've done that in the past. I don't think that has happened previously on an ends report, but we can certainly do that. The question I have, I think, is more around the data that's being requested. So as I'm looking at the global end statement, it's giving that goal for where we need to be in 2026. So that is the goal, and then our benchmarks are along the way as we move forward. So every year I see that as how are we progressing towards that aspirational goal in 2026. So when I'm being asked for the I guess the more extensive data, is that around what data am I to bring forward other than to just maybe break down those 5 aspirational goals according to subgroup? Is that what, so for example, if we're looking at the attendance category, so let's go into goal number 2, would it then create all of the documentation or all of the data around all of the different subgroups on where they're at in attendance? Because I believe right now we're just taking the overarching, the 95% goal is the goal across the district where we want to be in 2026. And we're not there yet across the board, but we could break that down into subcategories to see where we're at with every different group, if that's what's being requested.
Raymond, do you want to expand on your request?
So I guess in short, I'm more than happy to meet all of these requirements. I just want to make sure that we're bringing forth the right data for you.
So can you elaborate on how far down you want them to dig to bring you the data you're requesting?
Well, I know OSPI breaks it down by gender, by race, ethnicity, by program, whether it's special ed. What are the other categories? Migrants or farm worker student, migrant students, and so forth. So nothing beyond what OSPI provides, just those indicators or those sub.
And are you looking for how many years? I mean, because are you asking in addition for comparable data from another year or just this current year to match up against our 2026 goal?
Well, as I mentioned, I like to look at data that shows if there's any trends or any discrepancies between student populations. It could be for this year. I'm good with just the reporting year. So I don't know what anybody else thinks. I know that Graciela had asked for additional disaggregated data as well. So I don't know what she would ask for, but for me, it would be the current reporting period.
Okay, thank you.
I agree. Current reporting period would be helpful, and then over time, as we have each iteration of this report, then having that history, that historical context year to year is helpful. I think as we have focused on equity, I'm glad you mentioned all those things, Raymond. With our focus on equity, I certainly grew accustomed to seeing the disaggregated data with those specific subgroups. And we've seen that kind of data for the previous ends reports. And although our overall goal is a district-wide goal, it's helpful, again, looking at the data through that equity lens. How are we doing with all of these subgroups? And then that might then arise, if there's a disparity, then what is the district doing? What are you as a superintendent doing to address that disparity on, you know, graduation rate specifically, or attendance rate, or whatever that might be?
Okay, Trevor, do you have enough? Okay. All right. Thank you for this discussion. Is there anything else that we would ask the superintendent to consider since he's bringing us back more information? Okay. If you think of anything, let us know. I think that's the end, isn't it? My computer went to sleep. Okay. Yeah, we've reached the end of our agenda. And we have no need for executive session, correct? Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right, thank you so much. We are adjourned.